All right. Holiest One from Mastodon. 80s. I don't know if they were really a band. They were put out by a couple of the Elefante brothers who were big in the Christian music industry at the time, big producers. A lot of bands. They put out a couple CDs, not bad. Christian rock, kind of hard rock, I guess you could say, or light Christian rock, something like that. Anyways, the song, the refrain, Holiest One, so Ms. McGowan, what do you think we'll be talking about today?
What is the sacred?
The sacred! Why the sacred? Why should that bring that to your mind?
It's on
Because it's on the board. Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Okay, thank you. Well, sacred and holy are kind of the same thing, maybe. Two sides of the same coin. They're in some ways synonymous, right? So I wanted to choose a song that had holy in the refrain or in the title or something, so I can bring that, so I could use it. Let's see where we left off. I think we went through this and these things, and I think we stopped with reality. I might need looking at my notes, I might need an extra class to cover the sacred. I apologize for that. So, because I might go over, I might have more to say than I have time for. So it might go into another class. So just keep following the syllabus. Do follow whatever the readings are for next week. Don't worry what I'm talking about. Just do the readings for that week, please. Let's see. Say anything else before that? No. Okay. Reality. So we're talking about the sacred or the holy and how human beings create things to interact with this thing that I'm calling the sacred, but people have a lot of words for it. We went over some of those words, and those words appear on the quiz. Yes. So many, if not most, human cultures acknowledge some kind of superior, super means above in English, super is above, so it, crosses all boundaries in a way. It's above us, it's transcendent in that way. Often invisible reality, not always invisible, sometimes you can see it, sometimes it appears to people, in the universe, and in this superior and invisible reality, people believe they can interact with it, talk to it, or whatever, think about it, and that it somehow controls and gives meaning to all aspects of human life. Okay? It has ultimate meaning for human life. This is the point of life, or the point of why the universe exists, or whatever. So many human cultures seem to recognize a superhuman reality could also call it supernatural, but a lot of times it's just superhuman. It's a more powerful being in a way, kind of like humans, but really, really powerful. So a superhuman reality of power and meaning and purpose existing above and yet amongst human beings, amongst the human beings. So you see this differently in different religions. The Judeo-Christian religions kind of have a separation between the supernatural and the natural. Maybe they shouldn't, because nothing's supernatural to God. It's still natural to him. He's just what he is. But, there's a difference between, the earth and God. Okay, one is a material object that's created, and God is the source of existence. He's the creator. He's not created at all, and he's not material. So there's that difference. But in some religions, the sacred, or what I'm calling the sacred, exists amongst human beings, and it's like human beings, spirits and things. Some religions, the trees and the grass and the mountains have their own kind of personality in a way, and it might be associated with a god or a spirit who lives there or lives within it, even is the same as it. You find this in religions like Hinduism, especially. And these things, these superhuman realities that give power, that have power and give meaning, they witness to a belief that there's a reality filled with beings, places, things that is not part of the real, quote-unquote, real, or the quote-unquote normal, or the quote-unquote ordinary world. They are not real in the sense of they're probably super real. They're more real than real, and they're abnormal. They're unusual, and they're not ordinary. And so we have, what is reality? What do we want to say reality is? Well, the reality is just something existing independently of human experience. Anything, it's real. The word reality is simply based on the Latin word res, rei, which means a thing or an object. Okay? I give you both forms because sometimes in Latin the words change in the possessive case, so you need to know both forms. Because as it changes in the possessive case, it affects other cases in Latin. So the nominative or subject case is res, and rei is of the thing or of the object, possessive. So anyway, anything that exists independently of me is reality. What we can call reality. And yet sometimes this other reality that exists independent of me interacts and interferes with the normal world. It even exists over and above the normal world. Even if it exists within the normal world, it's everywhere. It exists over and above the normal world, even in places where the normal or natural world is not. Heaven, hell, Hades, the place of the dead, or the underworld. These are not part of the normal natural world, and it exists apart from it. So it exists maybe sometimes within the natural world, but even transcending the natural world, even beyond it. It surrounds the natural world, the normal world, and includes it, or in some cases exceeds it. So in a lot of traditionally, I shouldn't say a lot of religions, but in some religions, but some of the ancient religions, Hinduism again would be another example, but I think you find this in other religions, Native American religions. The gods commonly live in the mountains, so they're high up. I'll get you. So high up, the highest place you could be in that area would be the mountain. Above, which is above you, it's superior, and that's where the gods were. And so, for example, in the Hindu religion, a lot of times the temples were built traditionally according to like mountain houses that you would build up in the mountains. They'd have a different style. They'd have that style because that's where the gods lived. So I guess even when they were down below with the people, they still wanted to live in the same kind of house. Yes, Ms. Lenrich.
So would that also be interdimensional too? Like, consider one dimension, we're in one dimension, but in an alternate universe and alternate dimension, consider that in reality too? Because you said about heaven, hell.
I don't think
gods and goddesses in like areas, but like would the interdimensional be reality too?
if the interdimensional could be shown to exist. I mean, you're talking like the multiverse and stuff like that.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know that something like that exists, so it's very theoretical. And I don't think, just from the little I know of other world religions, in Christianity and Judaism, I don't think that occurred to people back then. That there could be other parallel dimensions to there was just this, what you were living in. Certainly for like the Hebrews, that it's just this is it. And they didn't even conceive of an afterlife until much later. They didn't think of that. So they're not, in religions, I don't think they're thinking of, in Hinduism or Taoism or Christianity or Judaism, they're talking about a heaven or a hell or something like that, in different levels. They're not conceiving it as like different dimensions, okay, of existence. It's all kind of like the same thing, different levels of the same thing, I think. Okay, that makes sense. So let's see, where was I? Hinduism, yes, gods in the mountain. But even in some Native American religions, they talk of the sky god, the sky. So the sky is a big deal in a lot of religions. The sky comes into play, and that's where the gods also are, because it's high up, it's way above humans, Not in all religions. I think if I remember correctly, there are some Native American religions where actually, if you want to talk about heaven, you look down. You look down at the earth. Heaven is down, it's not up. Or the good place is down, if you want to say that. The place of the spirits is down, not up. So, you have to be careful, when you say, you're going to go to hell, you're going to go down there to hell. And so, well, wait, that's good, That's where I want to go, baby. Punch my ticket, Anywho, so there are differences, but in a lot of religions, it's the superior rather than the inferior. Okay, it's looking up at things, the sun, the sky, the high mountains, and stuff like that. And that natural, that very natural inclination, I think, represents the belief of what tells you something about what the sacred is. That it is kind of transcending, it's above everything, it includes everything that is below it, which would be the natural world. So it is, in a sense, everywhere, in a manner of speaking. The gods or the spirits are kind of everywhere. They can see all the things that you do, and they're always in some way present. Your ancestors, even if it's just your ancestors, the people your mother, your father, your grandparents who came before you, they're kind of like always around with you, and you're supposed to honor them even in death. Where am I? Okay, so this reality is totalizing. So nothing in human experience is beyond its influence. It has, and I've used this word already, but it has an overarching influence. It's transcendent. The word transcendent comes from Latin trans, across. You probably already know that. Like a transatlantic flight is flying across. I think they're trying to sign people up to go to Ireland, aren't they? Or are they going to Ireland or something? Or something they're doing here at Gwynedd Mercy. But, you get in a plane, you fly across the Atlantic. You've taken a transatlantic flight, so we know trans is across. Scando, maybe not, but scando in Latin means to climb something or ascend up. Again, think of the mountains. You have to climb the mountains to get up them. You transcend them. They're transcended. But scando also has the meaning of stepping over something, to surpassing it, in more conceptually like excelling. So anything that extends above and beyond something else. So the sacred is transcendent. There's a world or a reality that is, when you say beyond the natural world, it's actually beyond the actual or the normal or natural world. It has a reality, it goes over it like a cover in a way, consumes it. And that world has a reality and a meaning that the normal world does not have, at least not fully. That's why people look to it rather than just the world. I mean, for the most part, you can live in the natural world and get by, but there are some occasions in human life where people look beyond the natural world. They're looking for answers or for solutions, usually in crisis moments, health, birth, when people transition from one stage of life to another. Okay. And fear, when people are afraid of something. They want something that that's controlling, can control the situation, which implies that it has some transcendent meaning and purpose, because it can control the situation that you can't control naturally in the world, but it can do it, whatever this transcendent reality is. I think I already said that. But I don't know, because that's going to lead into an experience. Usually, this transcendent world or reality is not directly visible or perceivable, at least not by normal means. Okay, so religions especially have developed all sorts of stuff to try to see this reality or experience it, because it is trans-empirical. It's not just transcendent over the natural world, but it's transcendent over human experience as well. It's trans-empirical. Empiria in Greek simply means experience. From the Greek word peira, which means to attempt something, to do something, to try to do something. It's kind of like what experience is. Yeah. If you don't know how to ride a bike until you try to do it, and then you have the experience. And then and somehow your brain retains that knowledge so that you might not ride a bike ever for years later. And then someone presents you with a bike and you ride the bike again. And you kind of know how to do it again, don't you? I mean, you might be a little bit wobbly, but for some reason your body seems to know, even just because it has the experience imprinted in the brain. Try to do something. A person has no experience with doing construction, and then they decide they want to renovate the bathroom in their house, and they don't know what to do. So they have to look on YouTube and maybe read some things, but then that's one part of the process. Then you got to do it yourself. Peira. You have to try to do it yourself, and then you get the experience. That's where experience comes in. It's not just knowledge. Because once you try to start applying the things that you saw on YouTube or read about or whatever, you always run into problems. You run into things that you didn't experience before because you haven't tried to do it before. But now you're trying to do it, you realize, oh, maybe I should have done that first before I put down the tile. Maybe I should have done this first. So now hopefully you'll know the next time. Trying to do something, experience. Where am I here? Does that tie into experience? So people, to know the sacred, or to know this otherworldly or transhuman realm, you have to try it, okay? And so people have various ways of trying it, trying to experience the sacred, talking to it, prayer, meditation, trying to somehow connect the mind to it, to somehow transform the mind or put it in a position where contact can be made with this other world, this other reality. Meditation, yoga, even physical exercises, stretching the body in certain ways, putting the body into certain look like uncomfortable positions to me, at least when I've tried to do any one of them, even simple ones. But, combined with meditation and stretching the body, and also the pain, that's supposed to hopefully gear the mind or discipline the mind for the encounter with the ultimate reality. Okay, so all sorts of things, chanting, saying stuff over and over again, all sorts of stuff. Even taking drugs, certain psychedelic drugs, all these things humans use to get the experience. They try to make contact with this reality. Why? Because this reality is filled with power and meaningfulness for people. And it's a power and a meaningfulness that are only found in that realm of existence, not found here. And it's not found usually in the normal world. Okay, so it alone, out of anything in this world, or I should say in this world, that's really misspeaking there. Forget I said that. It alone provides final, ultimate fulfillment for human life. Not that human life is a bad thing, although some religions disagree. Religions don't always agree. Some religions have a good view of the natural world and of human life. Others do not. They have a negative view of the human situation. Okay, but they all seem to agree that this other world will provide final fulfillment, whether they view the world good or bad or indifferent. And so the sacred is conceived as something that's absolute. It's complete in and of itself. And it's eternal. It's continuing. It's even if it has a beginning, it continues on. And it is final and definitive. Definitive comes from the Latin, which means to make a boundary of something. That's what definition is. You're limiting. You're placing a boundary. So the sacred, or this reality, this otherworldly reality, becomes the limit, the definition of what the world is, what it means. And it's the final definition. It's the end. And because it's the end and the last, it is also ultimate, ulter, which simply means last in Latin, ulter. But as you see, it can also mean on the other side of, the beyond. It's kind of like how some people describe the sacred. It's the beyond, the place beyond. The natural, beyond what? Well, the natural world, human life or something. It's the afterlife, the life beyond. So ultimate, being last or final. There doesn't seem to be anything beyond it. And so we can talk about ultimate reality. Ultimate reality. And this is a phrase that I kind of prefer for talking about what the sacred is or what religion is about. There might be better terminology, but I haven't encountered it. It's difficult. It's difficult to define. As when you start thinking about something, how do you want to define it? And that can't always be easy, like we talked about defining time or what color is and stuff like that. But you're always grasping at something. Hopefully you're getting most of it, but probably not all of it. There's always a lot to learn and think about. But this is, what it's about. It's ultimate reality. We know what reality is. We know what ultimate is. Bring them together. What is ultimate reality is a power, a force, an order or structure, you could say, believed to encompass the universe. Okay, so you get that idea of transcendence. It encompasses the whole cosmos and gives it final and lasting meaning. Gives it final and lasting meaning. Okay, I guess with meaning, that's where experience comes in, because you want to try to get into relationship with this ultimate reality to find out what the meaning of things are, what the meaning of life is, or the universe. All right, so this is ultimate reality. Okay. How does ultimate reality reveal itself? Well, it reveals itself in a variety of ways. This class, we're going to mainly focus on sacred writings, dedicated to talking about ultimate reality in some way, okay, the writings. But if this were world religions, we'd be talking about a whole bunch of other stuff included. Belief systems and worship and practices that people do. So it's ultimate reality because there's nothing beyond it, whether conceived physically or existentially. So even if in some religions they conceive of the world materialistically as a physical reality that just extends forever, infinitely, all right, some religions do that. They believe that, the world is basically just material and extends infinitely. It's still ultimate because it goes on forever. There's no end point to it. And it's real. It alone actually is. This ultimate reality is the really real, you might say. It alone really, it alone actually is. It's what gives purpose or meaning to everything else, from the highest form of being to the lowest. So from gods to the atom, this ultimate reality gives meaning to all of those things. And it provides pointers to its existence. Sometimes in human beings, sometimes ultimate reality can take over a place or a person or a thing. So you have, places like mountains that are considered, they're called sacred because it's a place that points to ultimate reality. And so people, it depends on what people have different ways of handling it, their experience of ultimate reality. And sometimes you don't go there because it is a sacred place. It is a pointer to sacred reality, so you stay away from it. So you don't touch it. And other times you do go to it. You make pilgrimage to it. You go to it all the time, So people have different ways, opposite ways of handling ultimate reality. But they're recognizing its presence, that there's some kind of pointer to it here in this place and not other places. All right. And so this ultimate reality we might call sacred or holiness. Okay, so now we're getting to the idea of the sacred or holiness. Ultimate reality is this power of force and order, but the sacred is different. It's kind of like the manifestation of ultimate reality. It's kind of like what the sacred is. Ultimate reality is ultimate reality. It's this power, force, or order, but how this power, force, or order manifests itself to human beings, or how people sense that it's there, is called the sacred. This isn't a religious studies course, so we're not studying religion itself as a human phenomenon. So, I'm not getting into specifics here. I'm kind of mashing up a whole bunch of information that I have. So a lot of this discussion is taking insights from different thinkers that I'll mention, like Rudolf Otto, who was a German theologian. I say he's a German theologian, although he wasn't really part of Germany proper, but his heritage is ethnically German, who was a theologian, a thinker, studier of God, you could say, but a theologian, scholar. Mircea Eliade, who was a Romanian religious studies scholar, very famous in the field, who taught at the University of Chicago for many, many years. Emil Durkheim, who was one of the famous sociologists. You might have heard of him if you've taken a sociology course, or if you're taking counseling courses or something, or psychology, he might come up somewhere along the line. But Emil Durkheim, who wrote a lot about religion, he was French. And, they taught, each of them talked a lot about the sacred and the holy and religion. Oh, that's interesting. So what is the definition of the sacred? The name for the perception, the human perception, of a transcendent, enduring, and powerful order in the universe that is ultimately real and meaningful. I could have just said it's the perception of the ultimately real, I guess. Make it simpler. But anyways, I try to spell it. Transcendent, enduring, and powerful order in the universe that is ultimately real and meaningful. And it comes from the Latin sacer, which, as you can see, has its meaning at its root is to have something that's dedicated to a god. So right there, a supernatural being, some kind of otherworldly being. Something that is dedicated to the other world. Okay, it's not just natural part of this world. I say solid. You can ignore the Greek. I'm not getting into that. It's not that important. And also, what I say about the Hittite Shaklai, I guess that does tie in because the Sache, these are related languages. They're both Indo-European, part of the same language family. Hittite is an ancient dead language from, I think the Hittites were mainly in Turkey, modern-day Turkey, and from what we found, where we found their language. So Shaklai is related to Sacer, or Sacer, as the Latins would have actually said it in classical Latin. But Shaklai doesn't mean dedicated to a god. It talks about behaviors or customs, rituals. So ritual will come up later because that's the way that you experience the sacred and you make contact with the sacred through ritual and ceremony. So there's that connection with the Hittite word shaklai, which is related to the Latin sacer or sace. A synonymous word, but not totally the same. As I said, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, the yin and the yang, you might say. Not exactly the same, is holy, this idea of holy or holiness, okay? The sacred and the holy. The sacred is more the concept, I would say, and the holy is more the adjective or maybe the more practical application of the sacred to things and people and places. They're sacred, they're holy. They're holy because they manifest the sacred, okay? They show forth the sacred. So what is the holy? The holy, something that's holy, and you can also say this about the word sacred, but something that's holy is set apart for honor or devotion. Okay? It's something that you want to show respect to. All right? Devotion is another in your commitment to it. All right? And it's set apart for this purpose. So you don't treat it the same way you would treat something else. So I don't know. If I'm walking around and, I'm walking down the street, Taylor Swift is walking towards me, and she spits on me. I don't know why. No, maybe she was just spitting out her gum or something. And she hits me, and oh, I've been hit with Swifty spit. Whatever. I might save the shirt or something if I have got some of her saliva on me or whatever. Put it in a plastic bag, really save it. Put it up on eBay eventually. I have to authenticate it. Maybe I could take a picture and get Taylor to sign something. But who knows? Anyways, who knows? People go crazy for that stuff. They get lock of hair from the Beatles or something like that. Sports memorabilia, you got a shirt that Eli Manning wore, somebody wore in a game, so it has his actual sweat on it, and the dirt. People want that stuff. You want that contact, all right? It's in a way set apart, and you do set it apart. You display it, you put it away. You don't touch it. You don't take it out and let everyone hold on to it. You show it to people, but don't hold it. Don't take keep it away. It's set apart in a sense, that kind of a secular holiness, just a natural, non-religious, one might say, holiness that people might show to things. And the same thing with the supernatural or ultimate reality. There are things that people set apart and honor. The word holy comes ultimately from the Proto-Indo-European word. Comes into other languages, like it's not so clear with Sakher, but it's a little bit clearer in the Germanic languages. Kailo, you think of holy, or heilig in German and stuff like that. Kailo is the origin of that word, and ultimately it means healthy. I mean, again, a lot of our words have very basic meanings. They go back to just basic life realities that people dealt with. You wanted to be healthy. You didn't want to be sick. You wanted to be whole and complete. You wanted to be uninjured, no broken bones or, eczema, scabby skin or something. You wanted to be healthy again. You want to be whole, the wholeness. And so that's where the word holy comes from ultimately, no pun intended, from this idea of healthiness or being uninjured. And so you see this idea still apparent in a lot of religions. Did anyone do the reading from Leviticus yet? Anybody? No one wants to raise a hand? So I should assume nobody? Should I assume nobody? No, Dr. Dunn! I shouldn't, because maybe you just, you're a personal, private person. You don't want to tell me. You don't want to show off. You're shaking your head. So I'm assuming you did it. Because you... Okay. No, you didn't do it? Thank you. Well, at least you're honest, too. My people, Mr. Plains. What am I going to do with you people? Anyways. Well, if you had read the reading from Leviticus, it's called the Holiness Code. It's considered part of the core of the book, maybe the original part of the whole book of Leviticus, and then additional writings were added to it. But, there's this repetition. God says a number of times, I want you to be holy, because a holy people, because I am holy. So he designates the Jews, the Hebrews, the Israelites as a holy people who are set apart from all the other nations of the world because of their relationship with the ultimate holy, which is God, the Lord. So he reminds them of that. Why am I telling you to do this and not do that? Because by following these rules, they will set you apart from the rest of the world, and they will show your holiness, your set apartness, I guess. Also, in the sense, they will show how righteous you are because you're doing the will of God. But you might have noticed, if you do eventually read it, that, there's one portion where they talk about, it talks about what kind of animals can be brought for sacrifice to the Lord's. Didn't have a temple at the time, they had a tent. That would be brought to the tent where the animals would be sacrificed. And it's very specific that the animals have to be healthy and uninjured. No broken bones, no blemishes. I guess that means they can't have spots on their fur, their coat. They can't be blind. It's very specific about, what the animals cannot have. They can't have an abscess that's oozing pus or something like that. So they can't be sick, basically. You're not supposed to give sick or weak animals to the Lord. You're supposed to give the best, the healthy animals in sacrifice, showing your devotion. So this idea is there. This idea of Kylo or holy meaning this. It persists in people's minds, even when they might forget the original words or whatever. Though Hebrew is not a Proto-Indo-European language, it's a Semitic language, different language family, but the idea is the same. You oftentimes find the same ideas. Turn this over. So okay, yes. Here's a quotation. Does anyone want to read this quotation? It comes from the entry on the sacred from the Dictionary of Anthropology. Not the only dictionary of anthropology, but the one I looked up that I have in my possession. You can see Peter Metcalf writes this. Does anyone want to read this about the... Okay, thank you, miss.
The sacred denotes the class of objects, events, and beasts that culture defines as different from those of ordinary reality. As an adjective, it refers to a quality of difference, of being separate from and more important than the prevailing world. In many cases, it implies a link to an unseen, supernatural order of existence.
Excellent, thank you. So a lot of this I've already said, but there are some new things coming into play here. The idea of the profane world, this idea of profane, but also this idea that the sacred connects to an unseen order of existence. It's a connector. Okay, this connector. So it's not ultimate reality itself necessarily. It's a pointer to ultimate reality. And you know what? I'll go to mystery in a second. I'll stay on holy because in the article, well, this is related to the article that hopefully you read by Karsten Kolpe in the Encyclopedia of Religion. I know it's kind of long and it's boring, but whatever. If I can find something better, then sometime in the future I will. Too late for you, Mr. K. But whatever. But I hope you looked at it because he talked about sanctity, which is another way you can describe holy. There's sacer in Latin, but there's also the word sanctus, which also means holy. Sacer usually gets translated as sacred. And then holy, or sanctus, usually gets translated as holy, sanctus. So they're kind of the same thing. Sanctus, sanctity, or holiness, which is the state or quality of being dedicated to a supernatural being. Sanctus has that sense of dedication to something, to the ultimate reality. So holiness or sanctity is being dedicated to a supernatural being. At its most basic, to be sacred or holy or sanctified, Ms. Bolton, means to be set apart for use regarding a god or a spirit for specific religious purposes or reason. Okay, you take something and you consecrate it, you make it holy, you designate it as something dedicated for a supernatural purpose. And so you separate it from the normal or the everyday. So a cup is not a cup anymore, it becomes a chalice that might be used at Catholic Mass. All right? Even the name, the word changes. You don't call it a cup, you call it a chalice. Why? Because it's been dedicated to God, usually with prayer. It's separated from the normal and everyday use. And again, when we look at hopefully, if you do, look at the holiness code in the book of Leviticus, the priests, the men who are from a particular family, it was a familial thing. The priesthood is not a choice. It was a part of this family, the family of Levi, those who were descendants of this man Levi. Could only be priests in Judaism. So if you were born into that as a male, you kind of knew what you were going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to minister in the temple or in the tent of meeting where the sacrifices were held. And there are all sorts of rules about what a priest in the Jewish religion can and can't do, because they're set apart. They're dedicated to God. So they can't marry certain types of women, like prostitutes or divorced women. They have to marry within their tribe, the Levitical tribe, the people who are related. I don't know if that's really genetically very good, but but nevertheless, that's part of the rules. So there are all sorts of rules to set apart the priests from just normal everyday things. Other Jews could. I mean, divorce was permitted in the law of Moses. So other Jews could get divorced. Women could get divorced. Men could get divorced. And you could conceivably remarry. Okay. Not if you're a priest, though. Now you've entered the realm of the sacred. The priest is a sacred, so the rules, those normal rules don't apply. You could marry a prostitute. One of the prophets was married to a prostitute, the prophet Hosea. Not if you're a priest, though, because now you're entering the realm of the sacred. So, and as per the article by Kolpe that I mentioned in the Encyclopedia of Religion, sanctus is kind of interesting because sanctus is not really an adjective, although it's used as an adjective, holy. It's really more of a verb. It's a participle. It's a past participle. It comes from a Latin word sanctio, which means the same thing, to be dedicated to a supernatural reality or dedicated to a god or something like that, to dedicate something, to set aside or designate something as sacred by some kind of ceremony. And so it's more active in that way. It's a verb, not a noun here, sanctus, to actually, so when we do this we do the kind of the same thing or have the same thought in English. You know, when we talk about being holy, it's not just holy, it's being, a form of existing as holy. So something is sanctified. Its existence now is holy. It becomes holy. And so now ritual comes into play. Shaklai. I mentioned shaklai before. Rituals and ceremonies come into play. How do you make something holy as a pointer to the holy, to connect you to the holy? Well, you have to do certain ceremonies. And that's why in some religions the ceremonies are all important. Like in the book of Leviticus, God gives all sorts of rules about what kind of animals can be brought to him for sacrifice. You know, how long you have to eat the sacrifice, because that's part of it. The priests, you know, some of it's burned up to the Lord and offered, but parts of the animal are kept, some parts of the meat and the flesh, and are eaten are the property of the priest and can be eaten by him, and also will be eaten by the people who participated in the sacrifice. But you can't hold on to it for too long. By 3 days, you know, it's not sacred anymore and it's not acceptable. So there are all sorts of rules that you have to follow. Hinduism, the whole structure of ancient Hinduism was, and their sacred writings is based on how to properly offer sacrifices to the gods and the spirits. And they had to be done correctly, because if they weren't done correctly, then you might piss off a god or a spirit and they hurt you. They do something, or they won't do what you want them to do. So the ceremonies and the rituals become very important as ways of controlling, but also interacting with the sacred. I think I said that already. Some of this is repetitive in my notes. I need to edit. Let's see here. What else do I want to say? I said that. Okay, that's good. That's what I want to get into. The sacred or the holy is something that it's something that you're both attracted to but also repelled by. What do I mean by that? People are attracted to the sacred or the holy and they want to interact with it. So through mysticism or spirit possession, stuff like that. Think of voodoo in Haiti. You know, people dance around and exhaust themselves, hoping that the spirit will allow an opening for a spirit to enter into them and to possess them. So that because they want that experience of the sacred. Or people can be afraid of the sacred and want to control it. So that's where magic comes in. Black magic or white magic, you know. black magic where you want to do harm to people who are your enemies, but white magic where you want to protect people from harm and stuff like that. You're afraid of the sacred. It's dangerous. And so the sacred, it invokes a mixed ambivalent reaction. On the one hand, there's this instinct to avoid it. There's fear and terror. Don't touch it. Don't do that, or don't touch it in that way, and that's where, religion can become so interesting, I think, or maybe goofy, depending on how you look at it, It's like, if you can't go into a mosque, a Muslim mosque, place of prayer for Muslims, with your shoes on. You have to take your shoes off. It's disrespectful. Okay? You can't just go in and say, well, what does it matter? I don't believe in Islam, or I don't believe in God, or whatever. Supernatural, so what? From their mind, you're offending the sacred. You're showing disrespect. And it will cause fear and terror, or perhaps even anger. So it's very strong emotion. Because, they might be afraid of what will happen. God will punish us if it's disrespected, if we allow this desecration, making it not sacred anymore. This is a big deal. You find this a lot. I think Americans find this out when they go to foreign countries, or places that are maybe not the usual place you go to. Like if you went to a mosque and you realize, I do have to take my shoes off, and I have to do that, whatever. Or you have to bathe, like you want to go to a Jain temple, they usually bathe and wash themselves before they go in. You can't just go in any old way. Or if you say you're traveling abroad and you're a Christian, let's say, and you want to go into a church in Jerusalem, and they toss you out because you're a woman and you're not dressed properly. You'd be dressed, you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, or maybe a tank top, and you're showing, your uncovered arms and you're showing your legs. Stuff like that. That's considered disrespectful because it's considered sexual. It's considered trying to be attractive. And or you can't go in with your head uncovered if you're a woman. Or in some cases, if you're a man, you have to cover your heads, like in the synagogue. So, religion can have all sorts of rules that show the fear. You're doing this because you don't want to offend the sacred that you're honoring. So there's this kind of avoiding offending. Stay away from it in some ways. Don't go there. We don't go into that forest. It's haunted. Unless it's a horror movie. Then you gotta go in. I'm rooting for you to go in. Please go in. I want to see some carnage. Anyways, but on the other hand, yes, I want to come back to that word. When I talked about eusebeia before with the Greeks, the eusebeia is based on the Greek word sebomai, which means to have awe, to feel awe or be fearful of something, especially a god. Sebomai, to be fearful of a god. Well, I wrote it down. I hope I'll write it down. Hopefully you're listening to me. I hope you are. Anyways, sebomai, to be fearful of the gods. But it can also mean to give honor or respect to something. So, the fear of the Lord. A lot of times this appears in the Bible, to have fear of the Lord, which, it can mean literally should be afraid of the Lord, to give him respect, and be afraid of doing things that disrespect him. So again, Ms. Wenrick, going back to our reading from the book of Leviticus. Ms. Belts, yes, excellent. In Leviticus, it gives this little story in the midst of all the rules and the laws. It inserts a little story about a man, an Egyptian, so he was not Jewish, but he was living amongst the Jews, who was in a fight with one of the Jews, and he cursed their God. He cursed Yahweh, the name of the Lord. And the Jews were like, well, what do we do about this? And so, they had to wait for some kind of revelation from God about what should we do. So they kept him, somewhere outside the community while they held him in custody until they could decide what to do. And the revelation comes to Moses from God, who says, kill him. So here's the rule. And it's interesting, in this part of Leviticus, they kind of give you the context of how the rule came about, because this situation happened in the community. And initially, they didn't know what to do about it, but then they got a revelation through Moses of what God's will was. He disrespected my name. Any person, whether a stranger, in this case the Egyptian, or a Jew who curses the name of God or disrespects it, even blasphemes it, shows disrespect to it, shall be stoned to death. And so that's what they did with the guy. That's what they did with capital punishment. It's the death penalty. So fear and terror and respect to the God are a big part of the holy. But on the other hand, and this is where it becomes ambiguous, the holy also kind of engenders or creates an attraction to it, an an instinct to want it and to be in its presence, which you can call awe or fascination. We're fascinated. People are fascinated. So it's kind of this, on the one hand, this feeling of stay away, Ms. Jacoby, but on the other hand, Ms. Jacoby, the feeling of, what is that? You know? And you kind of see that in how people act. You know, when you see something weird or something like that, you're like, hey, Bob, what is that thing? Whoa. You know? On the one hand, we're still the fearful monkeys. You know, we don't, but we're curious. You know, we're still on the, you know, we're still curious. It's like with children. You know, you see little babies do that. You know, you get, come, boom, and you scare them and they run away. So, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I've never done that to I shouldn't say I've never done that to a baby. But it's funny when you do it to babies, isn't it? And a bad man, Mr. Clange. So there's those instincts, those two instincts of fear and yet fascination. But the sacred, I think we recognize that in some way the sacred is dangerous by its otherness, and so we treat it as such because it disrupts the order of reality, of what we think is normal. People don't normally rise from the dead. Or what's another example I could give? Well, just to give that example, that's fine. It's one example. One well-chosen example proves the rule, okay? People don't normally rise from the dead. So if someone is completely flat out dead and they just come back, whether in good shape or bad shape, you know, in good shape would be like Jesus, and bad shape would be like, you know, Day of the Dead or, you know, Night of the Living Dead, where they want your brains. Well, they don't want you, or your flesh. They're cannibalistic dead people who've come back. It still disrupts the order of reality. It blows your mind. And so it's dangerous, it's weird. And because the sacred is dangerous, it must be treated properly. So again, going back to the book of Leviticus, Ms. McGowan. I'm trying to get your names in. This was not part of your reading, so I'm not holding you to it. But in the book of Leviticus chapter 10, in the 10th chapter of the book of Leviticus, there's this scene where two of the sons of this man Aaron, who's the high priest, his sons Nadab and Abihu, for whatever reason, decide to offer improper incense to God. Okay, part of the worship of the Jewish God was, amongst other things, other rituals, was to offer incense every day. And incense is just like resin from a tree that's dried and burned, and it hopefully has a nice smell to it. Some incenses stink. I know that from my days in the seminary. So you had to know which incense to choose. But some are very nice smelling and just very nice, very aromatic. And so that was, part of the thing, the daily ritual of throwing incense into the fire to burn it and have the smoke go up before the Lord. Well, Nadab and Abihu, God specifies very clearly in the book of Leviticus, actually it might be the book of Exodus, the end of the book of Exodus, how to make the incense that he wants. Okay? I want this incense and no other. Well, Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, the high priest's sons, decide they're not going to do that. They use what's called strange incense or foreign incense, whatever that means. And it makes God angry. So he kills them. Fire shoots out from the tent of meeting where the presence of God is and kills them on the spot because they have disrespected him. They have not treated him properly. So the sacred needs to be treated properly. You need to do things correctly and to show your respect, because if you don't, it can have dangerous consequences. And so the sacred is usually set apart from other things. For example, as I just mentioned, God resides in a tent amongst the Jews in the desert. He's not just he is amongst them, his presence, but his presence is delimited from them in this tent structure. So the sacred is set apart from people, and oftentimes it's forbidden from use or touch or sight. You're not allowed to see it sometimes. You're not allowed to use it for ordinary things. But people still want to be in contact with it, and that's why ritual is so important. And following the rituals properly. Ritual brings you into contact with it. And we could say sacred writings are part of ritual, because there's even ritual in how to write sacred writings, because they are sacred. So, for example, amongst the Jews, when you write out a scroll of the law, the first 5 books of the Bible, which contain the law of God, you can't just write it out. It has to be written on a scroll. I'm right there with you. God bless you, woman, keeping me humble. I'm always hot in this room. I'm always sweating. I'll take my jacket off. It's hot. It's sweating in this room. I don't know why. Anyways, it has to be a scroll. It can't be a book. Why? Because I guess they didn't have books 3,000 or 5,000 years ago when the law was given. They had scrolls, you put pieces of paper together or ancient paper and you roll them up. Put a stick and you roll them up. And so you still have to do that. You still have to do it. It's tradition. It's the ritual. And you have to write the Hebrew. It has to be written in Hebrew, so you can't write it out in another language. That's, again, the ritual. And there's a ritualistic way to write out the Hebrew. All sorts of little symbols and things that they put on the letters, the Hebrew letters, stuff like crowns that symbolize the Messiah, and their belief in the Messiah or Christ, the King Savior, and all sorts of other things. And, of course, it has to be perfect. You can't make any mistakes. You have to copy it exactly, hopefully, and in a certain way. So, there's a ritual involved for controlling the sacred and interacting with it. That's where, for this sacred text, this revelation of God. Because if you do it wrong, then the scroll can't be used. They throw it away. You have to throw it away. Or dispose of it in some way. Well, I shouldn't say they throw it away, because it has the name of God in it, probably. So you can't even throw it away or destroy it. You have to save it somewhere for the rest of eternity. The holy is mysterious. The holy is a mystery. The holy is a mystery, which is something that is not known, that we don't know, or that we can't really fully know. Okay? That's what a mystery is. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. I didn't notice that not washcloths, hand towels, little towels are gone. Oh, there they are. So, when you read a book that's a mystery, like a murder mystery, why is it a mystery? Well, because you don't know who did it. You'll find out at the end, hopefully. But, it's mysterious because you don't know. You don't have knowledge of who committed the crime or the murder that you're reading about. You're hoping to find out who did it. You're hoping to solve it. But it's unknown knowledge to you. Okay, hopefully, it's hopefully will be known. Also knowledge that, we can't really know fully. We might be able to know something about something, but it's a mystery. So you are all mysteries to me. I can know something about you, but not fully. I can't fully know you. I'm not spending enough time with you to do that. We're not talking intimately. So I'm not getting any information from that. And even if I spent my whole life with you, let's hope not. For your sake, not for me. I'm just you people are great. I don't think you want to spend the rest of your life with me hanging around. I'm a buzzkill. Anyways, even if you spend your whole life, can you get full knowledge of another human being? Even yourself. I mean, we admit that we don't have full knowledge even of ourselves. We're always developing in our knowledge just simply of who I am and here's myself. If it were the case that you could have full knowledge of yourself, you wouldn't need counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists. I mean, why are people going to them in the first place? Self-knowledge. They want to know why they're doing the things they're doing and how to solve them. And even when you get older, you'll come across moments, I think, in your life where you'll say, oh, I realize I was like that. I always thought I was like this, but now I'm realizing that I'm like that. You might be 60 years old and you're just realizing something, So, yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that there are things we can't have full knowledge of. Most things in our human life we can't have full knowledge of or we can't know. Probably everything. And that's just built into the system. Because we have material brains, yes, the brain is made out of matter, whether you believe in a god or a soul or something beyond the brain, or you're a materialist and believe it's just the brain, still just the brain. And the brain is enclosed in a very compact space in the skull, and it's not getting any bigger. And even if you did have a huge brain, like, see like cartoons with aliens and they've got these immense heads and stuff like that, or like Pinky in the Brain. If you ever watch those cartoons, he's a little mouse who wants to take over the world and he's got a huge head, because of course he's really intelligent. That's how they symbolize his intelligence, by giving him a huge head with a big brain. It's still limited. There's still a point at which the brain structure ends. There's only so many neurons, so many cells in that brain, which means there's a limit on how much information it can ultimately contain in it. It can't contain everything. Eventually the computer gets full, right? I hate to tell you, but yes, I mean, we just simply as the creatures that we are, the way we're made and built as material physical creatures, we have space limitations. We can't possibly know everything. Our brains are just, as good as they are. They just are what they are. They're not going to get infinitely big, infinitely large, so that you could maybe pack everything into them. But to say that something is mysterious does not mean that it is unknowable. And that's something that a lot of people take away from that. They think especially in religious terms, when people talk about something about God being a mystery, they think, okay, so you can't know it. So what's the point? No, it doesn't mean that a person might mean that you can't know it, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily unknowable if something is mysterious. It just means it's beyond full comprehension. And to say that one doesn't know or understand or can't have full knowledge or understand does not necessarily imply that no knowledge is possible. This is where people kind of fall into what I think is a fallacy, is agnosticism about anything. I mean, because usually it refers to agnosticism about God, and the argument flows somewhere along the lines of, well, since you can't really, with our brains and our limitations as created things, as creatures, we really can't know everything about God. So we can't fully know God. So we can't really fully know he exists. So if you can't know he fully exists, then you can't say with certainty he exists. Hence, we have no knowledge. Agnosis, agnostic, no knowledge. At all? Okay. Well, think about science, the natural sciences. Just the universe we live in. We know very little about it. And there are things that we probably can't know because about 20% of just the sky, I guess you could say the sky, but when you look up into the night, well, you can't really see it because of light pollution, but you see the stars and you can see the Milky Way galaxy, part of it. But just the way we're positioned in our galaxy, we can only see 80% of the stars in the rest of the universe, even with all of our equipment. There's 20% we just simply never can see. We have to change our position in the galaxy or whatever. That doesn't seem likely to happen anytime soon. So we can't see it, which is really, it's interesting, but it's also not good because it seems like this is the point, this 20% that's blocked out, where everything in the universe seems to be being drawn. Astronomers call it the great attractor, because they don't know what the heck it is, but there's something that's like drawing everything, every universe, all of them, the billions of universes, including us, into this 20% that we can't see. We wish we could, because we'd like to know what's there, but we can't. So do we stop doing astronomy and science? Just become agnostic on the universe? No, it's just the universe. Just live with it. Just live with whatever. Live your life. Accept what the things that are, that there's light, there's gravity, that there's matter, that there's energy. Okay, fine. But you can't know anything because you can't know it fully. So be agnostic about that. I'm not saying that necessarily means there's a God. It doesn't necessarily prove the argument for a God, but I just think it proves that it's not a very good argument against there being a God. By saying something is mysterious and not known fully, therefore can't be known at all, or because it can't be known 100%, stop trying to know it. It probably doesn't exist. The sacred is mysterious because it represents the wholly other to the human being. It's so completely different from our experience that we have as the beings that we are, which is physical, material beings with a beginning and origin in time, and maybe an end in time if death is final. I hope not. But anyways, could be, I guess. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm a Catholic theologian. No, I'm the teaching of the church. But it's wholly other. This is a reality that lies beyond my ability to fully conceptualize. Or another way of putting it is that the sacred is mysterious because it's secret. It's private. The word secret comes from Latin and it means to be hidden. And in the sacred, there's always that hiddenness. It's like the sacred reveals a little bit to you, but somehow it also seems to always withhold, keep a little bit back. It never fully reveals itself. And even in the natural world, you find this happening. If you study physics, there's a thing called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, where when physicists try to test electrons in an atom, an atom has little protons and neutrons and electrons flying all around the outskirts of the atom and stuff like that. And depending on the atom is what it is, depending on how many electrons it has. Whenever physicists try to locate electrons within an atom, the electron moves. It's almost like it knows they're trying to find it. As soon as they try to find it, it's not there anymore. It's someplace else. They can't, It's just really weird. That's why it's called the uncertainty principle. So all you have in physics when it comes to quantum physics is studying atoms and stuff like that. You only have approximations of where the parts of the atom are. You have to make really educated guesses. I mean, they developed all sorts of formulae and stuff like that in physics to kind of compensate for this problem. Which, you couldn't really measure the electrons in the atom because it's like they were playing games with, it's like, I want to find you, boom, I'm gone, I'm over here now, So they have to approximate. So even in the natural sciences, all we have sometimes are approximations, close enough stuff. So it might be kind of scary if you think. They're hidden, even in the natural world. It's like the electrons are kind of hiding themselves. They're revealing themselves a little bit, but they're also hiding themselves. And see this in religion. So, for example, anyone recognize this? This is in Philadelphia. Maybe you've seen this. If you've ever been to Philadelphia. Yes, you know it, Ms. McDowell. Donnelly. Sorry, Ms. Donnelly.
I think so. Is that the one that's near
Okay. I have very little knowledge of the city of Philadelphia.
But I don't know the exact whereabouts.
Do you know what it is?
Um,
Not sure? Okay. Does anyone recognize it? Think they know what it is? It is a religious structure, I'll tell you that. All right, I'll tell you. It's the Mormon temple. It's the temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where Mormons go, Latter-day Saints go for various religious practices, to get married, eternal marriage, to baptize themselves for dead people, and all sorts of other things, to learn the secrets, the hidden things they need to know to get into the afterlife. And only Mormons, only Latter-day Saints are allowed in the building. You're not allowed in if you're not a Mormon. You have what's called a temple recommend, which you get from your local religious leader, which tests to the fact that you've been living a moral life. You've been living as a Latter-day Saint properly. And you show that to let you in. So I can't go in because I'm Catholic, nor would I try. I wouldn't want to violate their sacred space. But there's a hiddenness. It's mysterious. What goes on in there? What's going on? So you find that in that religion. Mormons will say, like the missionaries will say, well, you can't. When people will say, oh, I can't go in, they say, well, yeah, it's because it's sacred. It's not secret, but it's sacred to us. That's probably not the best response because, as you just learned, sacred and secret are related. Okay, the fact that sacredness is oftentimes hidden from people. There's a hiddenness to it. It's because it is sacred that it's secret. And that's okay. It's okay. Just because I'm not a Mormon, I can't go in? Fine. That makes perfect sense to me. Those are your rules. It's a very sacred space to you. So no one who is not a Mormon can go. You're not a believer. In other countries, they have what's called the man house. This is Papua New Guinea. This is more of a cultural than a religious thing. It was a special house constructed within the community where only men can go into, or people who are foreign, people who are from outside the town. It's called the man house in the language. Women cannot go in it. Okay, so it's set apart and it's enclosed, so you don't know what's going on in there. You don't talk about what's going on in there. It's hidden. You have Catholic confessional. The priest is in a box, and the person he's talking to is hidden from him. The face might be hidden from him. You can't see what's going on. And he can't talk about what the person tells him. Because it's the person is talking to God through him. So it's sacred. It's mysterious. It's hidden. It's something that you can't really know what goes on there. You might wonder what goes on in a Catholic confessional if you're non-Catholic. And then finally, we have a whole city that is mysterious, which is the city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. No non-Muslim may enter the city. Not just the place where Muslims go to make their pilgrimage, hopefully once in a lifetime. This is the place here. But even the whole city. You cannot, if you're not a Muslim, you are not allowed in. The whole place is considered sacred and it's closed off from anyone who's not a believer. That's how holy it is to them. So you don't know what goes on in that city. You can see pictures of what goes on, but it's mysterious to people. You can't go in. Okay, so that's that. I'll see you on Thursday. God bless you all. Good to see you all. Where are they? Da 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 da. Dooby dooby doo. Da 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 da. Good day, sir. Good day, sir. Where's the button?
Thank you.
Have a good day, miss. Thanks. Where are you? There you are.